So the Latin for fascia means bandage. So that'll give you another image of what it is. What it is it's like a skin, a second skin that covers the internals of the body. So you have a second skin around your muscles, covers you from top of the head to the tip of the toes, like a bandage, but a movable one if we can at all. That's what we're looking for. Now, unfortunately, because immovability or immobility is common, bad posture from sitting and all that, and as you'll see, my shoulders roll as I sit here. I'm far from perfect myself, but it's a conscious effort we're looking for. So, once you're aware of these things, it can make it a little bit easier to manage. So today, science recognizes the fascia as a second skin. We'll put that in inverted commas. It's a new sensory organ. So you have your sensory organs, your sensory feelings, so touch, taste, all of those things, that they're so informative to the brain and for brain reaction to the body in how we're going to react. So like if you touch something and it's hot, you have that instant reaction to move away. Well, that's your sensory organs. Fascia is a sensory organ. So it's like a thin skin that surrounds and holds everything together. So it surrounds your organs, every blood vessel, every bone, every nerve fiber, every muscle and its fibers. Now you have your superficial, which is near the surface, and deep fascia. So deep fascia, we're talking about around the organs. So we wouldn't be looking to directly affect that, but fascia, as I said, is everywhere, but it's also connected to itself everywhere. So there's different layers and it all interconnects. It's crisscrossed by nerve fibers, so really responsive to your sensory inputs. So the tissue affects your autonomic nervous system. That's your nervous system that responds to stress. Afterwards, then you bring in the autonomic nervous system to reduce that stress. So your fascia, your skin inside your body, is very responsive to every kind of change. It's elastic, but at the same time, it's tear resistant. So it can be stretched. It doesn't tear. If you were to take, right, all the organs out of the body and all the bones, not that you would, but if you were, and left the fascia in there, the body would actually remain or keep its shape. So we were told for a long time that your bones are holding your body up. If that was the case, first of all, there would be an awful lot of weight on those joints, knees and ankles. And there is a bit, there's a bit of wear and tear, but the fascia and its function is going to help that. So that's very important to understand how much input it has or how much input we have on it. So picture an orange. I have a ball here now and we're going to do trigger points with this, but picture an orange and the orange segment. So imagine you're after cutting up your orange and you're looking at a segment. The thin white skin that's in between the individual chambers is like your fascia. So it permeates through and around everything, supporting it and making it slide and glide in the body, but you can see it if you try and picture it with an orange. You can also feel your fascia. So do this with me. I'm going to sit now and I'm going to move my chair, so sorry if there's a bit of noise. So when we try and move parts of our body, we try and keep the rest in some sort of static position so that we can feel the movement where we want. Okay, so we're setting it up here with our shoulders drawn away from our ears, back, draw them back towards each other, so your scapula kind of coming back together. You want to lengthen through the neck, make sure there's a nice long line between the ear and the shoulder. So like imagine that you have a string coming out the top of your head and pulling you up, making you nice and tall. And then don't forget that chin. We always jut, so just pull it back in a bit. Okay, so tilt the head from this position now. Tilt your head so one ear comes towards the shoulder. Keeping that shoulder down, like I said. And as soon as you start to feel that pull, so that pull sensation you can feel on the opposite side from your shoulder to your jaw, that comes mainly from your fascia, not the muscles. So we can feel it. I'll come back to later on plantar fasciitis, which is where I came across it first. You may have heard of it. Maybe an issue you've had yourself before or have heard someone have it. If you are recently just after starting walking, like we all are now, we're all getting out with this situation at the moment, trying to make the best of it. If you go out walking and your feet start to get a bit tight and tired, maybe even hot, a little bit of a stingy kind of feeling, that's your fascia tightening on the bottom of the foot. So plantar fasciitis is, right, so let's go. Itis is inflammation, fascia, so inflammation of the fascia on the plantar side of the foot, which is the bottom of the foot. So sometimes you can feel, some people have it, they step out of bed and they feel like they're after standing on something, there's sharp pain comes up through their foot. So that's another way that you might have felt your fascia before. That can stem from issues in the calf muscle. So as I said, like a bandage that covers the whole body, there's a chain reaction. So when people talk about referred pain, the place where the pain spreads from is not always the place where the problem is developing. So let's think about that. So if we're talking about, we are going to come back and speak about headaches, and I'm going to bring you onto that and explain how this works together. But if you're talking about that tightness in the bottom of the foot, in the fascia, and how it can come from tight calves or not stretching your calves after walking, little things like that can lead on to that tightness in the fascia. So it's like a chain reaction, a tightening that can be felt further down the line rather than where you think or where the pain starts. Bear with me, I grab a drink. And spill it. Okay. So hardening in the sole of the foot can travel up as far as the forehead. Funny, yes, but everything is connected. There's not one thing in the body that doesn't work in conjunction with something else. Everything is connected, and your fascia is definitely one of those contributing factors to that connection. So hardening in the sole of the foot can travel up through the forehead, through one of your fascial lines. That's the superficial back line, and the result can be a headache. Now, speaking about those lines, as I said, fascia is a skin that covers the body. Skin, again, loose term. What I'd like to compare it to would be, say, for example, cobwebs. You see cobwebs built in a corner of a room and they're not cleared. More cobwebs develop and it gets thicker. So it's kind of quite similar to that. It's very kind of wispy looking under the microscope, but very strong and elastic as well. And clearing the cobwebs in this case, in the case of a body, would be with movement. So just say, for example, your joints. You have your shoulder movement, and we looked at this the last time in the last webinar we did, but it was the hip at the time, but talking about the shoulder. If you don't move the shoulder within the full range of motion, you're creating an arc there that you're not getting. And that's where that fascia will lay down and harden, thicken, and become less elastic and movable. So people with, say, frozen shoulder, that kind of thing, is a limited mobility of the shoulder. The fascia lays down a thicker kind of a bandage and the movement is restricted. So kind of piecing it together now, you can see it's quite a big element of the body that wasn't really discussed. Happened was that cut the body so they could see what they'd drawn in the pictures, so the muscles themselves. So what they did was cut away this fascia, took it away from the body, placed it in a bin, thought no more of it, and focused on the connection of the muscles. And that's what helped them understand movement. But that thing that we threw in the bin was the part that was most important. So it's great to kind of finally come around to what this is. So hang on. Hi, Karen. Good afternoon. A couple more hellos there. I'm just making sure I'm not missing any questions. I probably am, but I will come back. Okay. My posture is ridiculously bad when I sit in here. I look. Just goes to show you awareness is everything. Awareness is key. It's where we start. Okay. So we were talking about that headache that can travel. So also the fascial lines. So we spoke about fascia being covering the body. There are fascial lines. There are 12 of them, superficial to deep, and they go in a certain pattern. Okay. So without going into too much, because the fascia is covered quite a bit in other courses of prophy and it's very complicated. Wonderfully great to understand, and once you get it, no bother, but there's a lot to it. Rather than go into all of that with you, there are different lines in the body. They connect each other, they work with each other, they work with the chain of muscles that's in that line. Sorry, fella. And anything along that line can be affected from impingement somewhere else along the line. Okay, so kind of keeping it vague-ish, not to overwhelm you too much. But how does fascia pain become noticeable? So is fascia the trigger for your pain? The problem is fascia doesn't always manifest, the pain doesn't always manifest where it originates. As we said, it can be somewhere along that chain. So this sometimes leads to incorrect diagnosis. With the help of typical accompanying symptoms, so what you'd expect to find with fascia pain, you can see whether your pain or symptoms are fascia related. So let's talk about that kind of pain, what we would expect. So we're talking about fascial line again. So going through the fascial lines yourself, even have a look at the pictures or online, because visually, once you see them, it can help. Simple little things like working with the abdominals. You would work on the pectoralis as well, because they're part of that chain. So, you know, there's a connectedness for every part of it. The types of fascial pain then that you might experience is pain that spreads along a fascial line. So do you feel it from the bottom of your foot up to your head? Now, quite possibly not the full line in that, but different fascial lines. If you feel it along the line, then you know there's more than one place hit here. It's going to be originating from somewhere else, quite possibly. Does the pain spread over a large area? So your fascia, if you have a look, I'm going to turn this guy around, hopefully you won't fall on me. Pardon me. You have what's called a thoracolumbar fascia. Not only that, but part is in the lower back. Okay, so it's quite a large expanse of fascia. It covers kind of in a V shape just around the lower back. So if you've quite a lot of tension in a large area, it could be fascially related as well. Does the pain lessen when you move? So lessen, not go away completely, but does it ease a bit? And do your movements feel a bit stiff? So like we spoke about before, that stiffness, that lessening of elasticity in the body, those cobwebby feelings in the body we were speaking about, very vague, I know, but those kind of pains or those kind of feelings, fascia related. Okay, but why does the fascia hurt? So as we said, huge sensory organ in the body. It actually has up to 10 times more pain receptors than the muscles themselves do. So if you're feeling pain where you think it's in a muscle, more likely it's in the fascia. What happens sometimes is as well when you're training, if you work your muscle grows quicker than your fascia does. So that strain, kind of pulling feeling can happen as well. So a larger area surrounded by muscle could be to do with your fascia. Simply, as we spoke about before, your plantar fasciitis, definitely your fascia. Some of them are quite obvious. Your, what's the one down here? TFL, down the side of the leg. Your IT band, so your iliotibial band, that down the side of the thigh. Let me see if I can show you. If we had muscles and fascia here, it would be that strip that comes down the side of the thigh here, and it can feel a bit of tightness into the hip, all the way down to possibly the knee on the outside. That's another piece of fascia that we would be aware of. So it has up to 10 times more pain receptors than your muscles do. And that's why people would refer to the human body's to it as the human body's largest sensory organ. So 80%, up to 80% of your body's pain can come from it. So I would say quite possibly, if you've tried foam rolling, it can be helpful. Foam rolling can be an issue because it can clamp on the tissues over too large a surface, depending on the size of the roller and the area you're working. So that's another reason why we'll come to the ball. The fascia connective tissue is closely connected to the nervous system and constantly sends signals to the brain. So that interconnectedness between your brain and your muscles, your neuromuscular connection, definitely has a huge basis in your fascia function. Healthy fascia is slippy but flexible. Limited activity, overworking the muscles, injuries, stress, all these create unstructured links, and the fascia becomes matted and forms hardened areas. It becomes particularly painful then when the fascia thickens and it impinges on a nerve. So you may have come across this nerve impingement in another way as well. Hang on. So jumping around the body here, because as I said, fascia is everywhere. Piriformis syndrome. So if you've ever had sciatica, you know the pain shoots, say, from the glute down the leg, and it can be kind of nervy feeling, jumpy. Sometimes that can be piriformis syndrome. Well, it used to be referred to as that, still is, but they've changed what they think the meaning is, which I'll get to as well. But in piriformis syndrome, the muscle crosses the nerve, the sciatic nerve, and when the muscle is inflamed, it presses on the nerve and can mimic sciatica. So very often, if you have a client who says they have sciatica, you can get them to do the piriformis stretch, see if it lessens that nerve impingement. Then you'll know whether you need to refer on. Any doubt, refer out. We're not doctors, but there's a lot we can do. So with the piriformis syndrome, as I said, initially it was thought, and there's so many schools of thought on this, initially it was thought that the muscle inflames and presses on the nerve. Looking at what we were just talking about there with fascia though, it could be also your matted, hardened fascia pressing on that nerve. So if these are areas, if we're sitting a lot, your glutes don't get the work they need. Everybody's glutes would be fairly inactive or underactive, and that can cause issues with flexibility, movement, fascial movement. Okay, so we said we wanted it to be slippy and elastic. It's hardened, it's not moving, it's stuck in one place. So if you think it's all connected, so now the piece that comes off of this hardened piece here, say the lower back fascia, starts to pull and be a bit tightened as well. So that chain can lead right up to your head, tension headaches, into your occiput back here, bit of tension in between the shoulder blades as well, where we hold our tension. So, you know, huge connectedness with the fascia there. Causes of fascia pain. So underuse, obviously, but overuse. So the body is constantly acidified by exertion. So all the toxins are released into the body by exerting yourself. This can have a negative effect on the fascia. That's not to say don't move, because movement helps your lymph to remove toxins from the body. So there has to be a balance, is basically what it is. Underuse and overuse, either way you're going to have some sort of problem, and you can work through it absolutely by treating the fascia and being aware of it. Hydration, of course, is important. If we want it to be slippy and movable, it has to be hydrated. So it's important to strike a balance between stress and relaxation, or effort and relaxation. Then you have unilateral or monotonous movements. Unilateral would be one-sided. So if, for example, somebody who's carrying a child on their hip, for example, would be using one side more unilaterally than the other. So they'd be holding the child here. Actually, looking at this poor guy, he looks like he has a little shift in the shoulder, so quite possibly he was holding the child. But So everything compacts and shortens a small bit here, and repetitive, monotonous means not much change to it, and unilateral. So, pardon me. So that can cause a shortening and a little bit of a hardening or thickening of the fascia on that side and a bit of stiffness. You know yourself when you get up in the morning, you're stiff and sore. I myself slept on the shoulder last night and I can tell you I can feel it now, so I can't wait to get into the ball with this one. Okay, so particularly affected with unilateral exercise or movements or monotonous movements would be runners, cyclists, office workers. So everything down to how you sit and hold your phone. Small little things can stack up and cause little issues. And again, may not be where we expect it. We could hold it here and find the pain is down in our hip somewhere, you know, so we don't connect those things then. Again, misdiagnosis because of lack of understanding sometimes. Chronic stress then. So stress has huge effect on the body. Anybody who's been stressed, which most of us have at some point in our lives, will know how it impacts the body. Every system, every organ is infected. And of course, fascia is no different. So it reacts to stress stimuli with tension. It tenses up. What often happens is you have that protective stance. So as people get older, they start to shorten in the front. The shoulders start to migrate towards each other, the chest shortens, the abdominals get weak and shorten. It's just that normal kind of protective stance that we start to go into, almost like that fetal position we're getting back to. And that can obviously cause layers of this fascia to lay down as well. If your stress and tension becomes chronic, tension builds up in the body and possibly then leads to your fascia pain. And then psychological trauma. Funnily enough, I don't know, I wouldn't have been an airy fairy kind of person, and I would have thought that a lot of things were very airy fairy. Black and white, had to be able to see it. So then this fascia thing really threw me because it's not something that's visible. You feel it. It's like with stretching. Stretching is about feeling. You need to be able to feel your movement to know where you need to move best. But psychological trauma can have an awful lot of impact on your fascia as well. That brain to muscle connection has a big repertoire here, more than we give it credit for. And that even comes down to your mindset. So if you are chronically negative, which hands up, that can be me very often, it can have a knock-on effect to your body and how your body is able to function. Also in reverse. So healthy fascia, healthy movement can help with better function of the brain. If there's no impingement or restriction in that neural connection, it's going to make everything just work a little bit better. If you suffer with myofascial pain, so myofascial is muscle fascia. So you have fascia, which is all over the body. Myofascial then will be specifically related to the muscles. And if you do suffer with this pain, different tools can help. So you'll have seen a lot of different tools around, even those hammers, the ones that kind of hammer the muscle out, quite intensive. As we said, your fascia is superficial as well as deep, so near the surface. So if you're hammering away nice and deep, you're going to be missing out on areas. If you've done massage, I'd be a sports massage therapist myself. So you would start from superficial and work your way into deep layers of what we thought was muscle and now we know is fascia. So you gradually get in there to where you need to. So these tools can be great. The ball is great for pinpoint fascia treatment as well as trigger point. So again, we'll come back to that. Exercises and movements with these tools can have a positive effect on your health of your fascia, and can relieve or eliminate fascia pain. Now, it will relieve it unless you make some changes. If it's a chronic postural issue and you go and try and fix it or take away the pain, you will get rid of it with these balls, the rollers, whatever we use. We'll show you in a while. it'll lessen, it'll go away, there'll be better movement. But if you're going to keep repeating the actions that caused it in the first place, obviously it's going to return. So there's a little bit of rehab involved as well. Now, it's not about walking around with perfect posture all the time, because as we said, forcing your body into a position it's not used to is going to cause issues as well. But it's about working in those ranges, allowing yourself the movement through full ranges on occasion, sometimes during the day, and just keeping that movement and flexibility and elasticity, keeping it active. Okay, so psychological effects. We spoke about that. We're going to talk about it's going to take away some stress and tension. Physiological are the ones that we're going to really notice most we respond to. Pain lessens, movement improves. So it improves fluid exchange using these tools, and I'm going to show you shortly. So as we said, the fascia is sticky and elastic and moist. So using these tools helps to improve the fluid exchange through the fascia, which is going to help movement. It's going to loosen adhesions. I keep looking at my skeleton here because I'm picturing him with so many trigger points. I'm going to show you some pictures in a while. It improves circulation. Nothing wrong with that. If we can improve circulation, you're going to improve oxygen to each cell, and you're going to improve waste removal from every cell as well. So excellent benefit for the whole body. Stimulation of lymph flow. So lymph is this is the cells in the body that take away the waste, basically. So it improves that flow, helps with the waste removal, so all those toxins don't sit around causing issues. Then relief and regulation of the nervous system. So if your fascia is impinging on any nerves anywhere, you're going to help relieve that. We're even talking down to carpal tunnel syndrome here. And again, I need a drink. I'm tripping over my words. Okay. And these factors manifest themselves in your body with improved mobility, relieves tension, reduces feeling of stress, accelerated regeneration, which means that you heal better and faster. That's all that toxin removal we were talking about as well. Increased performance. So if you're an athlete or into fitness, you're going to have better power, better strength if you have better working of your fascia and the joints, like we spoke about the last time. Reduced susceptibility to injury. So that means that you're less likely to get injured. So if your fascia is healthy, your body is healthy, and it's going to be less likely to get damaged at any point when you're doing your average every day or when you're training. And improved body awareness. That one is huge, and we don't think about it. We have this thing called proprioception, which is our body's awareness of itself in space, and then kinesthesia, which is your body's movement, awareness of the movement of the body. And those two things we take for granted. They're developed through our lives by our interactions with our surroundings, and we take them for granted. And then as we get older, these things start to diminish, and we haven't worked on them, and we don't know how to work on them. So even if you think about when you walk into a room, if the room was empty and your eyes were closed, you'd know how to get from one side of the room to the other. That's partly proprioception. As well as that, if I was to close my eyes and someone took my hand and placed it somewhere, that's kinesthesia, my awareness of where that limb is placed in space. And all of those things are going to be worked on by working on your fascia, because that input from your sensory organ is going to be huge in how your body patterns its movements, so how it understands it moves. Okay, it's gotten quite complicated there. So your fascia, that's the bones, should we say, of fascia. There's a lot more to it, but not a bad start, because we're going to go into trigger points here now, and then we're going to need to know a little bit about that fascia. At the very end, I'm going to show you how to use this ball. This is our trigger point ball, upside down. what you can do to start with is use a tennis ball if you don't have a trigger point ball. Tennis ball is grand to start with, gets you an idea of how to feel, what you're looking for, but the trigger point balls are designed so that the resistance is correct for applying the pressure to the trigger points we're talking about. It's made from non-slip material. It's specifically designed for getting in at those trigger points. And then we have the duo ball, which is really good for tension headaches like we're talking about, and the trigger points I'm going to show you in the back of the neck and the shoulders up here and the top of the neck and up into the occiput, which is the bottom of the skull there. So really useful for keeping the space so there's no spinal impact if you're going up the spine. Lovely for down the Achilles. So when we're talking about plantar fasciitis, I'd roll the foot with the trigger point ball, which I can show you at the end as well. And then I would sit and roll the duo ball up the Achilles tendon, which is just at the back of the heel there, going up into the calf. And it's really good for getting equal on both sides up through that gastrocnemius or calf muscle down the end. So trigger points. Apologise, I think my stomach might be about to rumble, so if you hear weird noises, we'll pretend it's thunder. Or my guy moving around. Okay, so just going to scan back here now for a second, make sure we have no questions. If I can find my screen, I'm looking at it. Okay. Not just yet, that's okay. Oh, I have used both for plantar fasciitis and amazing, says Rosalie. Yeah, absolutely. I love it myself. Just started trying to get back into walking and the bottom of my feet just like that. I don't know, it's new shoes, they're a little big. But yeah, fantastic for both of those for plantar fasciitis. Again, a little bit tender to work on, but I'll talk about that when I'm showing you maybe. Okay. Oh yes, how about a crick of the neck? When bringing the arms over the head, there's no pain, but bringing them down, there is pain. Okay, I would need to see the movement because, okay, so when you bring your arm up, there's no pain. There is for me, I can hear all the cracks, but when I bring it down, there is pain. Is it in the shoulder or is it in under the lats there that you're feeling that pain when the arm comes down? Get back to me on that and I'll see if I can give you a bit of info. Shoulder. Okay, so no pain on the way up, pain on the way down. So just put your hand in there and feel what muscles, without going into needing to know your anatomy, because everybody here should be able to do this themselves. As I said, it's fascia because the muscle pain we think we feel is in the fascia. It's just related to that muscle. So put your hand in there. When you bring your hand up, does it feel relief? If it does, then the muscle that's bringing the arm, that allows the arm up, is stretching. So maybe that's taking the pressure or the tension off that area in the shoulder. Feels like it's in the delt. Yeah, so lateral raises, how do they work for you? Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a minute because I don't want to miss out on what I want to tell you all, but I'll come back to that one shortly. So if it's in the delt, I definitely would look out into the pecs. Yeah, feel around. So you're starting here. You're starting where the point is, where you think the pain is, where you feel it. You can use your ball, roll around, bring it in around the pecs, in across under the clavicle. We want to avoid bones. You'd be surprised where some of these movements can be impinged. So even if you push on a point and then try and move, does it feel more or less? We'll go through it. So that would be about your trigger points. What is a trigger point? So we used, there's very, very different schools of study on this, just as there is with everything in health and fitness. And you'll be able to find proof for anything on the internet. But trigger points, there goes my tummy, sorry. Trigger points, it's a hyper irritable spot, so very irritated, a palpable nodule, so you'll be able to feel like a nodule, so like a knot in a piece of wool, obviously a little bit more tender and bumpy than that. So if you're feeling or palpating around the area, you'll feel a part that your finger kind of bumps over, and it's like a little nodule. Okay, so direct compression. So if you pressed on it, you would feel there would be a response. There would be like a jump sign or a local tenderness or a twitch response. There could be a little twitch in the muscle. We say muscle, but we know we're talking about myofascia now. If sometimes when you press on that point, you can feel pain elsewhere. So it can refer directly to another point. So sometimes they're called muscle knots or sore spots in soft tissue, and they cause a deep kind of an ache. It's great getting the water into you. Great for the fascia. So yeah, okay. So myofascial pain. Myofascial pain syndrome is like a chronic pain of too many trigger points. So the fascia is being affected in different places by trigger points that are eliciting responses elsewhere. Trigger points can be described as a micro cramp. They're as common as pimples. There can be up to 620 trigger points in the body. Some of them are latent, which means that they aren't troublesome at all. You don't even know they're there. It could be a simple thing that you touch off one day and it's like, oh wow, I didn't know that was there. Or a certain movement randomly that you weren't expecting causes a shooting pain, that kind of thing. So very painful often, and they seem to grow like weeds around an injury. So if you have an injury, because it's in your myofascia, so what we spoke about, just say you injure the hip, you have that tightening of the fascia in around that hip area, protecting all the structures underneath, trying not to leave them move too much, even though then you're trying to move it. But also that little protective stance kind of makes that fascia build up. So trigger points then, if this piece is all tight here, you can imagine that all the fascia leading off it in all the different directions is going to be pulled and tightened just that little bit as well. So imagine like a top. If you have it grabbed in the front, it's going to be pulled from every which direction, and that's very like your fascia as well. And then you can imagine that along those pulls will be little tender points like your trigger points. So not only they can be involved in injury, post-injury, but they're also something that's part of the body in general as well. They can be a major cause of back pain and neck pain, and they can be a complication or a bit of both. They can either cause the pain or the pain in the head can lead you to holding yourself a certain way. It's very circular. It's a situation that we end up getting stuck in that we find it hard to get out of then. So ligaments can even develop trigger point pain. I did a video up on our Pro Fitness page or our My Over 40 page, and I did a bit of a knee treatment in there, and it was all on ligaments, and it was with the trigger point ball, so very useful. But very careful, please, when you're working around the bones and bony structures when you're starting. Get a feel for where everything is in the body, and then you'll know whether you can kind of push through. If you're working through the medial border of the scapula, so that's between the shoulder blade and the spine, that space in here is grand to work on, but you want to try and avoid the spine itself. The spinal processes quite uncomfortable. The scapular border in here would be great to work on, and your trigger points are going to lead from there up into the head and around to the front of the skull as well. So they're areas developed in taut, ropey bands of muscle fascia. When pressure is applied to these trigger points, sometimes there's referred pain to another part of the body. Causes of them then are symptoms. So deep pain in localized areas. So it's more localized, it's more small, it's more to a point. Pain that gets worse when the affected muscle is stretched. So there's where the difference is in your trigger point and your fascia. Fascia gets better with movement, trigger points gets worse as it's stretched or strained. Muscle pain that gets worse or fails to improve with time. So it feels like it's getting more impacted. Presence of painful knots in muscles that produce pressure when intense pressure is put on them, they produce referred pain. So very localized in one spot. If you were to place the ball and place pressure, the referred pain would be evident. You could have mood or sleep disturbances with this one. Muscles that are weak, stiff, inflexible, or have reduced range of motion would be a response from trigger point pain as well, weakness in that area. Okay, so that's more or less the difference between trigger points and fascia pain or myofascial pain. There is an interconnectedness, as we said. So edge of or where they may be placed in the body. So bear with me. And I just flick over my screen here. And this won't take long. I just want to give you a good look. Sorry, I'm skipping all over the place here. Now you're getting a good view forward. So yes, welcome to My Over 40. So when we're talking about My Over 40, My Over 40 is a program to deal with these trigger points and fascia pain. And that's why I'm here with you today, to give you a little background about what those things are, how you can do it yourself a bit, but also the My Over 40 program. As an instructor, if you were to take it up, it gives you the tools to step through the full body fascia trigger points, how to treat them all, and how to improve the treatments with movement, with your flexibility and mobility movements.